So it feels so good here. It really feels home here. And I know it's because of Reverend Harriet's consciousness and the consciousness of all of you. It really, Michael and Noelle are from OCSL too, and it's like, it just feels like that same consciousness, because it is, it is. So when Reverend Harriet asked me what my topic was, well, I asked her first, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, well, I'm doing the themes from CSL, but if you want to do something, you can. And so I came up with this being peace in turbulent times. And I have to confess, I have done this talk before, but they're never the same. And I just feel it's so necessary for us to be in that question, what is it to be peace in the midst of everything going on? I think most of us would agree. I recognize you too. I think most of you would, and you too, yes, and you too. Yay, okay. So, I think most of us would agree that these are turbulent times. That, call it what we may, we can, put all kinds of fancy words to it, and they're turbulent times. A lot's up, and a lot's up to be healed. And so, when I am with this, I realize this is such a rich time to be alive, and that our souls have decided to be here at this time, and each of us could say, for this have I come. Jesus said that on the cross. We don't have to get up on the cross. We can just say, for this have I come. I have come to be a light in the midst of everything going on in the world right now. I have come to be a place of peace, a place of unconditional love in everything going on in the world right now, because my consciousness makes a difference. I'm wondering, do we all really get how much our consciousness makes a difference? Because it does. The more we can be in that consciousness of love, of peace, of joy. How often do we think of joy? Of joy. As much as we can be in that consciousness, we are lifting all beings everywhere, because here's the fundamental truth. There is only one, right? There is only one. And who was it? I don't even remember who it was, of everybody that's spoken this morning. It might have been at the meditation where Paula said something about, acknowledging that we are each part of each other. That we are all, that's how I interpreted what she said, that we are all dimensions of the one, and so we're all dimensions of each other. And what happens to one of us, what happens to all of us. So we can choose at a time like this to be a place of elevation of consciousness on the planet, or we can choose to drag things down and place our energy and our attention on what's not working and what's horrible. The ain't it awful story. Isn't it terrible? And so I know what I choose. I know what my soul came here for. And it's not always an easy path, is it? To stay peaceful in the midst of everything. To, as Ernest Holmes said, to be for something and against nothing. To be for something and against nothing. In other words, what am I for, not what am I against? And I remember in my early days, especially, I was in the convent for 9 years. I was a nun for 9 years. And then and that was the 60s. Now I've really dated myself. And that was the 60s. And when I came out, I was the group I was with, the order I was with, was very socially active. And so when I came out, I had that bent to be socially active. So I participated, this was in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. I participated in marches, rallies, but here's the deal. I was angry. I was really angry. And I was thinking negative things about everybody on the other side, them, the others, right? How often we have that mentality, that's the other. And I don't know how often you've had that in the past couple of years, pre-election and election, and everything's happened. It's been a piece of work for me, and I'm up here to tell you that. And, I know what I believe, I know what I trust, I know that I know God is all that is, I know it's my life, I know it's your life, I know it's every life, I know it's the life of every politician, it's the life of every newscaster, it's the life of all. That's the only thing that is. I know that deep within. And does the negativity still come up? Yep, it still comes up. So I was being with this the other night, actually, when I couldn't sleep, and the image came. You know, in the Tao, there's that image of mud or dirt in a glass, and that you pour clear water into the glass. And what happens is eventually everything clears up. And I think the Tao saying is something to the effect of, do you have the patience to wait until it all settles? You know, do you have the patience to wait until it all settles? And so what came to me that passage doesn't say, because the Tao is very short, you know, they have little short things, is that in that process, all of the gunk comes up. It's not just you put clear water in and all of a sudden the dirt and the mud and everything is gone. It takes time, and the stuff comes up, and it's not pretty, and it breaks up, and that's what's happening on the planet right now. For me, the first way I can be with all of this is to look at what's the context I'm looking from which I'm observing this. What's my context? And the context for me is that everything that's happening is happening because we are ready in consciousness for it to happen. We're ready. There's so many points of light on this earth plane, you know, and of course in the invisible it's all one. In the visible it's around all these different places, but can you feel the elevation of consciousness? Now I'm blessed. My Facebook friends are all very positive, all a couple of thousand of them. They're very positive. And so what I see posted on Facebook, when I have a chance to look at it, is all of the light that's coming through, the positive postings, all of the beautiful things people are saying, the prayers that people are praying. I see all of that. And it tells me we're ready for this. And there is a strong enough consciousness now that it can come up and it can be dissolved, because let's face it, the stuff in our country's been here. It's nothing new. And it's just, okay, we have a catalyst now that's brought it up. And it's the same as in our individual lives. In case you're thinking I'm just talking about the other life of the country, it's the same in our individual lives, right? We have our challenges. We have our stuff that comes up. We have our turbulence that comes up. And as far as I can tell, no matter how evolved we get, we'll probably have it coming up for the rest of our lives on this earth plane. That's kind of what I see. And I know a lot of evolved people, many of you in this room. Definitely you, Jack. And, Reverend Harriet, and just, all of you. We're all evolved, beings. And so it's time now. And so what's happening, I almost lost my train of thought there. What's happening is the stuff comes up for us individually too. So what I'm saying about the whole applies to the individual. What I'm saying about the individual applies to the whole, because let's go back to the basic truth. There's only one of us. And each one of us, I want to take this moment, because I always want to say this in a talk. Each one of us, each one of you is a dynamic, beautiful, magnificent, intelligent, wise, abundant, whole, and perfect expression of the divine. And even more than an expression, you are it. See, you are it. You are the divine in form. You are here to be the hands, the feet, the eyes, the ears, the voice of God on this earth plane. And for this have we come, to be this right here, right now, even in the midst of everything that's going on, in the midst of all of it. We are called to be it. So I want to tell you a story and kind of be with this, because I'm going to ask you for a little participation here maybe. So some of you know this, and if you know the outcome, don't say anything, please. So there was a king, and he commissioned artists in the land to paint a picture of peace. And so all these different people painted pictures of peace, hoping that the king would choose their picture, because he was only going to choose one. And he was going to choose the one that most conveyed peace. So there were two final ones. All the pictures were great, and he came up with two final ones. One of them was a picture of a beautiful, placid lake, and clear blue sky, mountains around the lake, just looking very, very peaceful and quiet. That was the first one. The second painting was quite different. And people were kind of stunned that he chose this second painting as one of the final two. The second painting showed there were mountains in it, like in the first one. However, the mountains were very craggy and rough. You know those rough kind of mountains that you see? Not a tree-filled mountains necessarily. And the sky above, instead of being blue, was gray. And there was an indication of thunderbolts and lightning, so it was storming. And then there was this torrential waterfall that was coming down. And sometimes we think of a waterfall as being peaceful. This one didn't look so peaceful. It looked pretty rugged. And so that was the other one. And the king noticed when he looked very carefully, the reason he chose it as one of the two, when he looked very, very carefully, he noticed that right behind the waterfall there was this little branch or beginnings of a tree or something in the mountain, and there was a little bird sitting in a nest right there. The bird was sitting in the nest, perfectly peaceful, perfectly content. So those were the two pictures. My question is, which one do you think he chose? And why? And would you choose that one? Yeah, back there. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I think too, when Jesus said, "Look at the birds," they don't worry about their present moment. Right? Yeah. They don't worry about where their food is going to come from, and so it kind of reminds me of being present.
Yeah.
It's just peaceful, no matter if there was thunder, lightning, waterfall. It didn't worry. It was present.
No, what? Yeah.
So it was peace.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well that is the one that he chose. Now, I was sitting with this because I told this one whenever I gave the same talk a long time ago, a few months ago, a couple of months, and I was sitting with it and thought, is that still the way I see this? And something in me said, unlike the other talk, that it can be both ways. He chose the one he chose, and it could be both ways. So I haven't explored that any further, so I can't tell you much more about it. Except that what I always like is that instead of either or, can we go to the and also and find the truth in the and also? You know, so I was with that, and I thought, maybe this is an and also. And why would that be, you know? And what led me to it was I was thinking, well, what if somebody in the group says, well, the one with the placid lake, of course, is the peaceful one. Because I would not say you were wrong. I would say, oh, you're looking at it in a different way. And here's the deal. Can we look at everything that way without judging? One of my favorite Rumi quotes, many of you know, is, beyond all wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I love that quote. And I think I love it because I strive for that, to meet you right where you are without the good, the bad, the right, the wrong. Because as Shakespeare said, you know, there's no good and bad, only thinking makes it so. There's ultimate good, which is the good of God. There's ultimate good. And in the human experience, you know, and that's what Shakespeare was looking at. You know, he was looking at ultimate good. So, the first thing, and my first point, which I'm still on, is recontextualizing what's going on now. So that instead of, isn't it horrible, I can look at it as, isn't this great? Look at the opportunity to transform all of these things. And sometimes where we go with that is that we think we have no power to do it. What difference do I make? What can I do? You can do a lot, but see, what you can do is in the invisible. And where we need to get with that is that that's the most powerful place to be, is in the invisible. It's much more powerful than what we see in the visible world. So, you know, what I've always said is that, you know, you could be, and from that place, I've got two thoughts going at once. From that place of knowing the invisible, you can get involved in politics. You can get involved in, I'm not saying that's not important, it's just what's the consciousness you're doing it with. And many of us aren't called to be involved that way. And so what we are called to is knowing the truth of oneness. No good, no bad, thinking makes it so. and notice that there is an evolution happening in consciousness. Something is happening. Something is wanting to emerge. And as Michael Beckwith talks about, we're here to serve the emerging paradigm. We're here to serve what wants to come next. And we do it by our consciousness. Now, to me, that's comforting. Because I know I'm not going to be up on a world stage saying this, probably, more than likely. And I can do what I can do in my small sphere, and most importantly, I can do it from consciousness. I can get up here and talk. It's not going to make any difference if I haven't embodied this stuff. If I'm not working on my own consciousness, it's all empty words. Emma Curtis Hopkins, the great New Thought teacher of teachers, she taught them all. I've been told that sometimes she would get up in front of a group, have no words. She just didn't have anything to say. And she'd sit there, and a couple of hours later, people would leave, and they felt totally fed, totally inspired. That's the kind of consciousness, that my difference, your difference, makes you make such a difference in consciousness that no matter where you are, you're lifting people, you're being a beneficial presence. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that beautiful? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we can look to what our teachings are, and we can say, there's a universal law that always responds to us. Bottom line, universal law, it responds. And the universe, and part of that is that the universe is always mirroring to us. It's always mirroring. So here's where the rubber hits the road for me. Maybe I get to look at some people in the national scene, or maybe it's just in my personal life, and I get to look at somebody that's bugging me, And instead of saying, what's wrong with them, I have to look and say, what's in it in me that's getting irritated by this? What is it in me? And is that quality in me? Because more than likely, the very thing I'm irritated about is present in me somewhere. Is present in me. That's the piece of work. That's the transformation. So I get to look at that. Where is that in me? If I think somebody is narcissistic, overly narcissistic, I get to look and say, where's that in me? Is there anything in me that gets narcissistic? Is there anything in me that thinks that things have to be my way? Is there anything in me if I feel, because I get irritated by controlling people, is there anything in me, that's controlling? Most likely so, if I get irritated by it. You're hearing what I'm saying? So there's this mirror that's always in front of us, and I'm not saying, this is not the same as saying what's wrong with your consciousness, or what's wrong with my consciousness. I do not like it when people say that. However, I look at what is the opportunity for healing here, and it may be ever so slight. It may be ever so slight. When I am seeing violence, what is it? Is there something in me that's violent? And I look at all of this and I go, none of us is out there hurting people. We're probably even, I would wager all of us in this room are very careful even about how we talk with people, that we're very conscious about being peaceful. I'm pretty certain everybody in this room has that going for them, has worked on their consciousness. And are there places in me, and I'm speaking about myself now, are there places in me that through my thoughts I'm being violent? Are there places in me that I am warring with? Now, what it ultimately comes down to is, am I warring with parts of myself? What it comes down to is, do I see parts of myself that I don't like, and that I denigrate, and that I put down, ever so subtly sometimes? Because you see, if I'm doing that about me, I'm going to be doing it about you too, more than likely. And if I'm doing it about me, I'm doing it about everyone. The basic principle that we said at the beginning, there's only one. There's only one. And so I get to look at that. I get to look at that. What is it? Where are the places in me? Are there places in me where, somebody drives by and I have this judgment of them? I call that an interior drive-by shooting, They go by, they walk by, and I got this judgment, Or I see them on TV, and it's like, I got them figured out before they may even open their mouth, And so I get to look at that in myself and clean up those places in myself. Because that's the transformational work that's being called for. So that I become more and more and more a presence of peace, a presence of love. Now, when I see these parts of myself, I might not feel so good about it, right? So what do I do with my feelings then? In New Thought, we're told where our attention goes, the energy flows. So here's the deal, though. If I pay attention to the feelings that come up, whether it's about myself, whether I'm upset by something going on in the world, whether it's about the turbulence going on, whatever it is, if I'm upset about it, what I need to do is feel that feeling. Here's the key, though, and witness it at the same time. See, if I just let myself go wild with the feeling, I'm going to give it much more attention and energy. If I'm just witnessing it without judgment, that witness is the part of me that is the I am presence. Because right now, as you're sitting there, aren't you aware that you're sitting there? Aren't you aware that you're thinking something, probably? Some of you might be thinking, God, let her stop. Other people might be might be thinking, this is a good time to rest. Other people might be jazzed, whatever, But so we don't want to ignore what's there. Ernest Holmes talked about, we don't deny the fact. And I would add to that, we don't deny the feeling. What we do is we let it come up because it comes to pass. So we let it come up, we feel it, we witness it, and then what's the next step? We let it go, and we affirm what's the absolute truth of our being. The absolute truth. But see, what I've seen too often is we jump to the absolute truth, and we ignore the feelings, and it's kind of like a veil over the feelings, probably more like concrete, or over our feelings. And then the feelings just continue. And at some point, at least in my life, what's happened, in some point, there's a volcanic eruption, basically. Because it's like, because I've been holding it so long. So we want to be able to be with the feelings in a way that is very conscious, very awake, very aware, letting them pass. And you may have to go back to that feeling over and over again because some of these things have been with us a long, long time. David Hawkins actually says that thoughts don't create feelings. The feelings are first, and then our mind makes stories up about them. Isn't that interesting? Reverend Michael told me that years and years ago. He said you're just identifying. You're making this worse because you're giving all these feelings stories instead of the feeling came. Oh, okay. And the feeling probably began when you were a kid, when I was a kid, and they were unresolved. And then we keep rationalizing them in a sense. We keep verifying them by making up new stories about them. So that was a sidetrack. Anyway, so you get the idea, though. It's okay. And in our teaching, we oftentimes don't hear about feelings, although it's starting to happen more now. And I've been teaching a class on Thursday nights, and we're using one of Greg Braden's book, and he's been doing a lot of research on the heart lately. He and the heart math people. And talking about the real wisdom is in the heart. That's where we feel, too. And so we want to really work with that and give ourselves permission to feel that stuff, because it'll open up the wisdom and the love and the peace and the joy and the goodness that we are. We are, each one of us, so infinitely good and magnificent. So after you felt these feelings, then you're feeling them to let them go. Then what you want to do is your spiritual practice of what's the real truth about me? See, what's the truth? And we can do it in spiritual mind treatment. We can do it with affirmations. The important thing is, let's take the idea of being peace now. So, I want to be peace. So what I can do is I can notice, what would it be like for me if I were living in peace all the time, right here, right now? If I felt peaceful like that little bird, if I felt peaceful no matter what was going on, what would that be for me? What would that be like? So it's kind of like you might conjure up a picture or something, but it's not like visualization, because what you want to get to with that, you want to get to a feeling tone. You want to get to, what would it feel like? Or I wouldn't want to say what if, or when I feel peace all the time, what does it feel like? See? And you might want to even just envision what would the world be like if we were all at peace? And what would that feel like? What would that be like if we could absolutely trust everyone and everything? If everywhere we go, everywhere we went, we would encounter peace. If there were no more crime, if there were no more people killing each other, and what would that be like? And sometimes it's hard to imagine because we haven't experienced it. And it's important that we be with it. What would that feel like? Then you take that feeling and you bring it into your life as best you possibly can. You bring it into your prayer work. And that's what affirmative prayer is about. Spiritual mind treatment is about. It's about evoking a feeling tone within us, because the universe responds to feelings as much as thoughts. And it's not that thoughts don't have their place. It's just that thoughts can help us create those feelings. But the feeling, see, we can say prayers and have no feeling whatsoever, no belief whatsoever. We can just be saying the words over and over and over again. They usually make no difference. However, if I'm praying and I'm feeling it and I'm knowing it, that makes a difference. And see, with spiritual mind treatment, this is what Holmes was talking about. This is what Joel Goldsmith talks about. You pray until you get that feeling that it's already done. So if you're experiencing a health challenge, what I'm knowing right now is radiant well-being. I'm knowing that there's a pattern of perfection within each and every one of us. Within me, there's a pattern of perfection because I am divine. It all goes back to I am divine. If I'm having angry feelings, resentful feelings, unpeaceful feelings, chaotic feelings, I know that I am peace because God is my life. I am peace. I am love. So this is how you work it, You work this stuff. And you work it until you believe it, until you know it. And when Gloria was doing my bio, I did realize at one point, all I need to know is God is my life, and then the rest is piece of cake. And that's true. It's absolutely true. Once I got it, and I'm not saying I don't have a ways to go, because I think we all do. We're continually evolving. But when there was that, how there's, at some point, there's kind of a shift that's a major shift for us? It's like, oh, something just shifted. Now I get it. At that point, everything changed for me. Everything. I knew I was abundant. I knew that I was love. I knew I was peace. I knew I was joy. And then when the world pulls me sometimes and tries to make me think otherwise, or my ego mind, it's not the world, it's my ego mind, wants me to think less than, then I remember, because I've practiced. It's practice, practice, practice. Practitioners are called practitioners because they practice. It's not because they're 100% there already. They're practicing. Ministers are practicing. Gurus are still practicing, believe it or not. The Dalai Lama is still practicing. He talks about times he gets angry or irritated, and then he has to do his inner work. And so we're all practicing. So here's the deal. Being peace in turbulent times. Recontextualize. What are these times all about? In your life, if it's turbulent, what's this about? What's my soul wanting me to grow into? See, here's the deal. Just like in the world, what I talked about, the clear water going into the glass? It's the same thing with our lives. Have you ever noticed how when you set an intention and you pray for yourself, or you have a practitioner pray for you, or that oftentimes stuff gets stirred up? Have you ever noticed that? Yeah, because that's what happens. It stirs up so that it can be released. Oftentimes people in this teaching get very disturbed by that and sometimes even leave because they think it's not working. And what I say, if that's happening, it is working. It is working because it's being stirred up. So you just keep putting that clear water of consciousness into that glass. You keep doing it individually, you keep doing it collectively, and know that that's what's happening on this earth plane. And you get to that place of being at peace because God is your life. God is your life. And peace is not some wishy-washy thing. It's not an absence of war. It's not an absence of crime. It's not an absence of anything. It's a dynamic power. And Ernest Holmes said, peace is the power at the heart of God. I've been contemplating that phrase for years. Peace is the power at the heart of God. What does that mean? Wow. It must be a pretty powerful attribute if he said that, if he caught that. So you just keep working with this within yourself. You see this. You are a peacemaker. What did Jesus say? Blessed are the peacemakers. I forgot the second part. Anybody? That was the meek shall inherit the earth. They shall what? Know God. Thank you. All right. Blessed. I knew somebody would know it in this group. Yeah. Blessed are the peacemakers. They shall know God. Blessed are the pure of heart. Go back to those beatitudes. Blessed. Blessed. You are blessed. You are here to be a peacemaker. You are here to shift the consciousness of the planet. That's what we're here for now. Nothing less. And you can do it by being your highest self, being your true self, being your authentic self, because your authentic self is your God self that authors your life. So with that, we're just